Scenes from my autobiography, written and read by Ronnie Corbett. While writing my autobiography, I have discovered just how good I am at remembering things. Well, I've always known it, actually. Ever since I ran away from home at the age of 9, joined the circus, and got a job reminding the elephants. Or was it the sea lions? The trouble is, I'm not so good at chronology. In fact, I failed it at O-level 3 times. I can't remember in which order. Obviously, if I'd known when I was young that I was going to write my autobiography, I would have lived my life differently. I would have organized my career into neat chapters, and I would have met my friends in alphabetical order. The dramas of my life would have been spaced out evenly. Unfortunately, it has not been as tidy as that. Things overlap. Events occur at inconvenient times. So to get over this chronology problem, or at least to distract you from it, I have included some passages on themes, such as golf and pantomime. And this means that when you get halfway through the story, you may discover that suddenly I am 12 years old again, which can be quite a shock, particularly for me. So here it is, my autobiography. Well, of course it's my autobiography. Let's face it, I'm not likely to write Madonna's autobiography, am I? I hardly know the woman. I was born in the Simpson Memorial Hospital in Edinburgh, in Lauderston Place, opposite the fire station, on December the 4th, 1930. I know I arrived in the evening, but I don't remember what time it was. My mother always could, of course. They left a swab in, so that's what made it quite memorable for her, I expect. This was mentioned from time to time in later life, almost as if it was my fault. When she was a young woman, my mother had had a very serious appendicitis which developed into peritonitis. In those days, they used to make sufferers sleep in a steam tent, and they dosed them with pure lemon juice to clear out the poison. The peritonitis led to her losing one ovary. This was another family legend, like the swab. It was known, but not much talked of. On the rare occasions the subject was raised, the tone was grave. I thought my mother looked wistful. It was as if this ovary was a member of the family who had gone away to sea and never been heard of since. It occurred to me that my mum, only having one ovary, was the cause of her producing such a small first child. I later realized that it couldn't have been that, because my brother Alan and my sister Margaret, who came after me, were all the right dimensions. Perhaps I should say something about my family background. My mother's parents were from Kintore, near Aberdeen, and they migrated, as many restless Scots have always done, to London, where my granddad, James William Main, was a policeman. He was a station sergeant at Upper Norwood and Gypsy Hill, not far from where I live now. His wife, Margaret, was cook housekeeper in quite a grand house in Upper Belgrave Street. I think she worked next door to Ellen Terry, or one of those great West End ladies who in those days lived in some style in Belgravia. She loved the theatre and all the glamour of it, and she would regularly go and queue up for the cheap seats in the West End theatres. Her London life was cut short when her husband was forced to retire early because of ill health, and they had to return to Scotland. I never met these grandparents, but from my mother's description of him, I imagine James William Main as a rather fragile, gentle, pale-skinned man, and I picture of him being a bit like Robert Louis Stevenson, with that same wan Scottish face. He loved words, and my mother told me he was a great reader of novels and poetry, and was much more scholarly than you would expect a policeman to be. My mother was a petite, dark woman with a pretty face, and before she married my father she worked for John Mingus in the head office in Rose Street, Edinburgh, on the switchboard, and later in the accounts department. Like her father, she was quite bookish, and she loved to recite poetry.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?